Hey, Ben, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Julia. Good to see you.
It's so good to see you. Okay, so today we're talking about lots of different stuff with how we teach swing and how to go about helping people learn in a way that makes sense and quickly. And so the first thing we're going to start talking about is leading a classroom. So tell me about how you structure the classroom and how you create the environment and make people feel welcome.
Well, the most important is to know their names, in my opinion. The very first class they walk in, uh, if you have the opportunity, stand at the door, introduce yourself, get to know their names. But if you, that's not always possible. So if you're going to be a bit busy, um, by the end of the class, I always say, all right, there's students' homework and there's teachers' homework, and my homework is to know your names by the second week. So I take a picture. And then I ask somebody in the scene to help me. I write a name down for every student in the picture. So by the second class, I know all of their names so I can greet them at the door.
I always love that because I felt like it made people feel like you knew them, like you cared about them as a person, not just as someone who can like do the moves that you're trying to teach. You actually like care about the people as dancers, and that's something I always really appreciate about your teaching. How do you like go about when you're in front of a classroom and trying to command the room, get people's attention, and lead people?
By talking as little as possible. Teachers love to hear themselves talk, which is why I'm here interviewing with you because I love to hear myself talk. but by keeping what I say poignant to the point and get them sweating as soon as possible. And then once that happens, because I've structured the class in a sequential way, even if the students don't see the big picture, by the end of each class, they should be saying, ah, and then they see the purpose. Everything had a purpose. And I think students like that. They don't realize the first half of the class, they're kind of like, this is weird. Why are we doing these satellite flashlights, tensions and compressions? This isn't swing
Yeah.
dance. And then all of a sudden they find themselves being successful at the end of the class. And you know their name.
Yes. Yeah. How long would you like go talking before having them dance or do a move?
Well,
Like,
the first class, the first week, you're always introducing the dance, a little bit of history. So that's probably the most talking. Um, but very little. I'd say if there's an hour long class, if I'm talking more than 10 minutes, I'm talking too much. And
wow.
I would say, yeah, 5 to 10 minutes max of talking. And that's combined because there's just small moments of talking to introduce or answer questions in the middle of class.
So it's really a workout. Everybody's coming out of that room
Absolutely.
breathing hard and sweating.
Before I start a class, I always send out an email or a WeChat, depending on which country. And one of the things, bring a towel, bring a handkerchief, bring lots of water and comfortable clothes to sweat in because it's a jazzercise or swinger size class.
Yeah, we're doing work. I
Exactly.
love it. How do you prepare with your partner that you're teaching with?
If it's a partner I've been practicing with a while, I'm usually in charge of the curriculum. I'll do all the typing and um, the outlining, and then I'll get together with them and I'll run through the class. And what that does is it allows me to kind of go through it mentally, which means I don't have to look at my notes during the class as much. Means we can work together, work out any kinks, because often in my mind something's going to work, and then when I'm working with my partner, it doesn't. So we can work through all those kinks and just makes us look more professional in the class. And that's pretty much it.
I always love that. Like when we would teach together, we would show up to the studio like 15 minutes early and chat through it all. And I always felt like then we were a lot more confident. We were on the same page about what we're gonna talk about that day. When people have questions, like how do you field questions and how do you help people who are maybe like struggling?
When they're dancing, they have a chance to really look inward and focus on themselves. And so there's parts of the class where there's really not much of a chance for a question. They're just dancing and copying or following. But later in the class, generally, there's two ways I usually teach. Sometimes I have to be a lead or a follow in the class, so I rotate as a student with them and I teach. And that
Mm-hmm.
generally doesn't allow for as many questions. That happens when you're short a lead or short a follow. But if you have perfect numbers of leads and follows, often I can step out and I can move around from couple to couple during the last part of the class. And I can give personal attention to the students, kind of like a mini private lesson. And then if I see at least 2 or 3 things, mistakes that are happening, that's an opportunity for me to, after the song is finished, say like, all right, I'm seeing a lot of students or a lot of leads struggling with this. So hopefully it's a problem I've encountered before, and I offer a solution, do a quick practice without the music, and then we put the song back on, and then I allow them to continue practicing. Sometimes in between songs, students will have questions, and then that will be what we practice because a student has asked a poignant question.
And usually it was just like one thing at a time, right? It wasn't just like, here's 6 questions and 10 things to do.
Yeah,
It was like,
never more
here's
than one.
one thing, and then you do it.
And
Yes.
if you can do it perfectly, it'd be one thing for the leads and one thing for the follows. But often
Yeah.
it's just one for one and the other, and you ask the leads to support the follows, or the follows to support the leads, and it's that one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Tell me about the problem students.
Yeah, problem students. Honestly, when I don't have too many problem students, and generally, if it's a
Mm-hmm.
problem student, I find it's something that I failed at as a teacher. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I mean, problem students are just sometimes they're students who talk too much, and that just means you don't allow them the opportunities to talk. Because if the music is playing, they're not going to talk as much.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the time, I'd say a problem student is somebody who just doesn't get it. And that's where you give a little more time to some students than others, and you've got to be careful with that. You want to make sure you space yourself out evenly because everyone's paying the same price. But generally, just spend a little more time with that student, and maybe after class you give them a little more attention after the lesson, like maybe a 5 or 10 minute mini lesson, or tell them to come early the next time.
Have you ever met a student who couldn't learn to Lindy Hop?
Yes, I think in about 15 years, I've met 3. And it usually comes down to 2 things: rhythm. They literally
Mm-hmm.
cannot hear the rhythm, which it makes, even if they have the physical capabilities, it makes it hard for them
Mm-hmm.
because how it's really hard to be a follow with a lead who's not on the rhythm, and vice
Yeah.
versa. A lead, if you're both pulsing in opposite sides, that's zero connection. Um, and then the others are some people who cannot match what they're saying to what they're hearing to their feet. And I've seen some students who will say, triple left, triple right, rock, step, and they're saying it and they're watching themselves in the mirror, but they're not doing what they're
Mm-hmm.
saying. So, but that's very
Mm-hmm.
few, very rare. Like I said, 3 students out of thousands.
So the vast majority of people, they can learn to Lindy Hop, right?
Yes, yes. And funny enough, the ones who learn it quickly are usually the ones who step out and move on to other hobbies sooner. It's the ones who are not so good, who struggle at the beginning, like Travis, who stick with it forever. And like
Right.
me, it took
Right.
me years to learn how to Lindy. So
Right. Right. Yeah. Those people who like those students who don't get it as quickly as other people, but they love it so much with such a deep passion that they are willing to put in the work, right?
yes,
To get it and to be good at it.
yeah,
People like Travis.
it doesn't
Yeah.
come cheap to them. So they put in the
Right.
time, they put in the money, and when you do that, you appreciate and respect something more. But when something's easy, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, anyone can do this. Next.
Right. Exactly. We're going to talk now about how the actual class runs from beginning to end. So when someone comes into the room, there's students milling about. How do you start the class?
Yeah, so the first thing is a warm up. And in most of the classes I've ever taken, teachers always start with a solo jazz warm up. And I've always liked that. It's because I'm not much of a solo jazz dancer, so learning new moves that way. But what I find is then the class begins, that warm up had nothing to do with the lesson itself. It was just a warm up. And since we have a limited amount of time, I prefer to make my warm up relevant to the class. If it's a level 1 class, I'm not going to teach them shim sham moves. I'm going to teach them
Right.
triple steps and slow steps and how to pulse and how to hold their body and their frame and how to work their way into the ground. And so for the level 1 class, often my warm-ups are just triple steps, triple step variations. And then somewhere near halfway through, I'll teach them some basic, relevant solo jazz steps that I hope to teach them that they can throw randomly into their swing dance because there's a lot of improv in swing. So warm-ups are always something that's going to connect with my lessons, the goal of my lesson.
Okay, and so what happens after the warm up?
They're generally sweating, especially the first 1 or 2, 3 weeks of a series.
Yes.
I make sure warm-ups are 10 minutes long, and it is just go, 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 song after song, and usually slower to
Wow.
faster. So then
So
the
it's really
next,
about getting the rhythm in their body, getting those movements
getting their
in their
feet.
body, right?
Yeah, you got to teach them how to walk first. So yeah, making sure
Yes.
that they can walk. Um, and so when they do come to the next part of the class, they're ready for a break. And the next part is how to connect with your partner. I always call it connection or connection and momentum. And so then I teach students. Usually, I just put them in at the very beginning. I always put them in one long line where they can look right and left, and they can see a long row of hands. And then from there, you just teach them how to connect with through their hands, how to
Mm-hmm.
connect with their core, how to balance each other out, and you and I we call that the tension and compression. When you're just
Yeah.
standing there looking at each other, I always have them shake hands. Nice to meet you. Get names. Again, it's not just teachers and students. Students and students should know each other's names. Have them shake hands. Hold those hands because then they now have their personal distance. As long as they're not shaking really far away or too close, now they have
Mm-hmm.
a distance for their connection. And I teach them how to hold their hands, and then I teach them how to balance. Tension is balancing back, and then standing there is neutral. So we just work on tension and neutral, tension and neutral, and then later we'll add compression,
Mm-hmm.
tension, compression, tension, neutral, compression. And over the 2 or 3 weeks, those are the three terms I really drive home during our connection. And then using that, we work on momentum. And then the momentum is just ignoring your feet and really focusing on the follow has to react to the lead. And we just do a
Mm-hmm.
two-dimensional back and forth. The lead gives some tension, and the follow moves forward with that. And then the lead stops that by compression and pushes them back. And
Mm-hmm.
then that builds up to pretty much all of the moves that they will ever do using their
Mm-hmm.
momentum, the strength of the momentum, and the connection.
Mm-hmm. And this is something you do every class, right? It's not just like the first class and then move on from there. It's like every
Every
class,
class.
right?
And like I said, warm ups are longer in the beginning, same with connection momentum. Generally, my first 2 weeks, I don't really get into inside turns and outside turns until the last 10 or 15 minutes of the class.
Hmm.
But then the later the class goes, if it's a 6 week course, those warm ups and connection momentums become shorter. So then we can really focus on
Mm-hmm.
using what they've learned in the first half of the series.
And I always thought that was amazing because the students have worked so much on just how to communicate with their partner, how to social dance, that it always felt like they could they could actually learn a lot of different dances um, because they know how to communicate. And I feel like in our current setting, where people not aren't social dancing regularly, that's something that we need to learn. Like we need to be able to communicate in that way. Okay, so after you do the connection and momentum, what's next?
My general goal is to make sure that the transition to the material, the goals of the day, the
Mm-hmm.
moves, I'll just say, okay, now let's try putting the warm up that we did with the connection and the momentum, and
Mm-hmm.
let's put our feet and our connection together. And so maybe in the warm up you had taught their feet how to do an inside turn, and in the connection exercise you taught them how to hold their hand and switch places while they follow with the arms of the lead.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they add their feet, and then they do the rock step, triple step, rock step, triple step, tension, neutral, tension, neutral. And then hopefully within a minute or two, you've got almost complete success on an inside turn. Then you just take that,
Mm-hmm.
say, all right, let's try an outside turn. And then usually at that point, I try to stop teaching the class and I say, okay, now I want you to switch places, but make up your own turn. And all right, go A,
Mm-hmm.
B, A, B, A, B, or A, B, C, A, B, C. And I'll give
Mm-hmm.
them one or two songs to create their own moves. And then after that, keep the music going. I say, Group A, get in. Everybody watches Group A's improv moves, and then Group B, Group C. Because that's really what your goal is you teach them the connection and the footwork so they can make up their own stuff. Because if they're only memorizing
Mm-hmm.
moves, I think they're missing out on some of the most important aspects of Lindy Hop.
Right. So from the very beginning, they're learning that they can use these fundamental building blocks to do anything,
Anything,
really.
as long as
Right?
they're connected.
Yeah.
they can do anything. Yeah.
So we've done a student demonstration. Is that the end of the class?
The end of the class would generally be um, a social dance where I just
Mm-hmm.
play a song, and instead of kind of keeping them in their circle or their lines, I try to mix them up in the class, play a
Mm-hmm.
song, and that again, that's a time for me to move from student to student or dance with them
Yeah.
as a social dancer. Play a song, and try to like 5 to 10 minutes at the very end. Sometimes I'll focus on floor craft, shift everybody into a corner of the classroom, and really focus on how do we dance for not hitting each other,
Mm-hmm.
and give them
Mm-hmm.
some tips and tricks for that. And then sometimes if I notice there's a lot of people with questions, we'll end it 5 or 10 minutes early, and we'll have a question and answer session where, again, that might be a little more of a talking class at the end. At the end of the
Mm-hmm.
class, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
social dance with a focus on floor craft or Q&A. Yeah, then you, again, as they walked in, you greeted them by name, you say goodbye to them by name as well. And of course, in China, we always got a picture of the class, and
Yes.
that helps
Yes.
me. They post that online. It helps me remember their names too, because everyone there has 2 names.
Yes, they've got their nickname and they've got their English name and they've got their real name.
And yeah, they'd always tell me their nickname or their English name and never refer to each other as those. So it took me down. I have
Right.
like 4 or 5 years till we learned everybody's 2 names, 3 names.
Right. Right. And I remember you and I would learn their Chinese name and you would learn their nickname. And then I would be like, that person. And you're like, what their name is this? And I
Yeah,
was like, who's what's name?
it was not efficient conversations when we're talking about swing dancers.
Right. um, Usually after they've completed like their 4 week or their 6 week session, the classes usually did a demo, right? Or like a performance at the end.
Yeah, that was different. And in South Korea and in Thailand, when we're taught first, social dancing was only teaching dance was only for learning how to social dance, and then groups would get together voluntarily and do performances, or we'd have a performance class. But in China,
Mm.
they wanted a demo, a graduation, a prom, and
Yes.
so that really kind of I struggled with that for a couple of years, but I liked it. And so if the class was 6 weeks long, the first 2 weeks I wouldn't worry about it, but then the next 3 weeks I'd make sure all the moves I taught them, I would start making. The end of the class would kind of be a choreography. If we're learning Texas Tommy, I'd say, all right, let's do 2 basics, 2 Texas Tommies, 2 basics,
Mm-hmm.
2 Texas Tommies, and repeat that. And then by the end of
Mm-hmm.
the class, maybe they could do 2 basics, 2 Texas Tommies, 2 basics, 2 inside turns, and that would be the
Mm-hmm.
class. And we'd come up with mini choreographies through the weeks. And then the very last week, my partner and I would choose a song and have prepared a demo, a choreography for all the students to share at one of the socials. And
Mm-hmm.
generally, it would be 80% about what they learned. And then, of course, because of the music you choose, you've got to throw in a few little nuggets of random stuff, transition moves or solo jazz breaks.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
and that's something I really liked because I think performances uh, help students kind of give them the tools they need when they're social dancing. They can remember, here's this person I've danced with in the performance. Only this person and I can do these moves. And so they can do sections of the performance. And instead of doing the whole performance in one dance, they can remember little sections that they can start incorporating into their social dance. And
Yep.
after observing students do that, I found it might be the best way to teach a class is to have those demo classes. Breaks down those performance barriers some people are afraid of having,
Yeah.
and gives them both the social dance and the performance aspect of swing, which is,
Right.
I think it was very
Which is
beneficial.
there, and it's historical too. Yeah.
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 So
Yeah, definitely. And it might not be the best for all contexts, but especially for China with such a performance culture and wanting to have that sense of like accomplishment or like I've completed the thing, I've gotten the certificate, like I think was really encouraging for students, and they loved it at the dances, at the
yes,
social dances.
yes, they did.
They loved it. Yes. So great. So now we're going to talk about the fundamentals of social dancing. So this is getting deeper into the philosophy of what to teach in a swing dance class. Starting at the beginning, what is the goal of a beginner's class?
To get them to sign up for the next one.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah. Although of course there's lots of ones. I mean
Yeah.
that's twofold. One, it's a teacher's job, but second, it means you did your job and that they enjoyed themselves, and so that's both reassuring for your pocket and reassuring for
Mm.
your professional skills.
Yeah.
Because what that means is that they not only did they enjoy your class, they're getting good exercise, they're meeting people, they have the confidence to go into a social dance full of strangers maybe and ask
Mm.
strangers to social dance with them. It means they've
Yeah.
gotten an awareness of a connection between the lead and the follow. They're gotten awareness of they're learning how to walk and swing. So it means a lot of
Mm-hmm.
things,
Mm-hmm.
and all of those things I just mentioned are what my goal as a beginner or as goal for the beginners are.
And you used to always say that helping people make their first steps in dance was one of your favorite aspects of teaching, right?
Yes, absolutely. Level one is my favorite class. Level one and two are my two favorite classes to introduce people to swing and get them to do it for at least a year of their life. If you get a student to dance for a year, that's probably like 5 to 10% of the people. You're doing a really good job.
Mm.
When I was
Mm.
when I was in high school, I taught swim lessons, and my favorite thing there was the 2-year-olds, the screamers. I don't want to get in the
Yes.
water. And then within a couple weeks, they'd be
Yes.
blowing bubbles and loving the water. And then once they were had fun, I didn't care if they could float or not, just loving the water. And then I'd give them to the next level.
So it's not even the skills necessarily so much as the mindset and the enjoyment, the
Yes,
desire to continue.
yes, it's fun. Life is fun, and I think swing dance for me, swing dance is one of the most fun things we can do.
That's amazing. I love that. So what are like the principles you focus on throughout your courses?
The footwork, the connection
Mm-hmm.
between partners, and then putting that together with the music. And that's a huge umbrella, but those are the basic principles I focus on in every class.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And like for me, in my first year of dancing, I'd be dancing with somebody, and all of a sudden my partner would stop dancing. Like, why'd you stop dancing? Well, there's a break in the music. I don't hear a break. So the music takes a long time. So it's hard to
Mm.
teach the music, but if your
Yeah.
footwork and your connection and the way you teach incorporates that, and you just tell them to do it, they're going to pick it up quicker. So trying to do all the fundamentals with the music because the music is so important. Those are my basic principles. Those three things.
How do you teach those principles?
The way I picked this up in an open class, and that's one of my advices, is go to many different open or demo classes of other teachers. Because I
Mm.
picked this up in
Yeah.
Eugene, Oregon. I was at one at the University of Oregon, and a teacher started using the words satellite, flashlight. And the satellite was about the
Mm.
momentum, and that was when the lead gave the follow energy, she would use that. So if you give her a little energy, she'll move in that
Mm-hmm.
direction. And the satellite idea is you're up in space, and so you ignore the friction of your shoes with the dance floor, and you just try to keep that same speed forward or backward or side to side. And so that allows the lead to really focus on his directions and allows the follow also to focus on their directions. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
really just the lead has to be on top of exactly what they want to do, and the follow has to kind of erase their mind to follow what the lead wants. So that's what the satellite
Right.
means. Pretending you're in space and really just moving around. And if the lead gives you a bad
Mm-hmm.
lead, you've got to follow it.
Mm-hmm.
And if the lead does that and sees it, wait, that's not what I did. Well, if it's a good follow, maybe that's what you did. So
Right.
it's a
Right.
play of a relationship. And then the flashlight is really just a way to, we always talk about putting a flashlight in the middle of your sternum. And this is
Mm-hmm.
mostly for the
Mm-hmm.
follows. And it always shines at the lead. And what that does is it teaches the follows to keep a frame. And it's not something, of course, once you become more advanced that matters as much, but it does teach those beginning follows to keep their focus on the lead. If their back is to a lead, they turn around and they quickly re-engage themselves with the connection
Mm-hmm.
through their arm.
Mm-hmm.
And so Travis always called it spacewalk laser, which works.
Spacewalk and lasers.
Spacewalk and
Yes.
laser. I think that translated in Chinese better.
Yeah.
But just those two concepts really help the tension and the compression and the neutral.
Mm-hmm.
And then the flashlight helps for the follows frame. especially on the swing out when the follow is coming towards the lead. If she's not shining that flashlight, he's going to grab her right on her chest, and that's one of the
Yeah.
rare times it's the follow's fault.
Are you doing the satellite and the flashlight starting from the beginning?
Yes,
Yep.
in a beginner class, week one, we'll probably spend up to 20 minutes on satellite flashlight. In this last few years, I started getting some of those exercise bands, found a set that were kind of smaller and stronger, and we'll use that to really exaggerate the feeling of the momentum and the connection.
Mm.
And it makes it a little more fun. And if you have a big enough studio and enough space, that really helps the tension and the neutral.
Mm-hmm.
But what I do always start with the 6 count. And again, before I move into why this is this opinion is the international swing community would say no, do the 8 count swing dance. The way the music is, if you're dancing to the music, it's an 8 count. But for me, I
Yeah.
want to make it fun, and I learned early on that if you're teaching swing outs, it's complicated. Honestly,
Yeah.
it's one of the hardest connections and footwork patterns I think in almost any dance, maybe outside of Argentine tango. Um,
Right.
so if you're trying to teach them that, it's and the moves on top of that, it's just too difficult. So with the 6 count, I found I can teach a 6 count in about 30 to 40 minutes, and I can take with a total beginner, especially if they're a quick learner, I can
Mm-hmm.
teach
Mm-hmm.
them what they need to know through footwork, connection, and the music, and I can have a good dance with them. One that I was like, yeah, that was fun. We hit those breaks. We had some fun with some jazz steps, and you followed everything I led, or followed everything you led. So
Yeah.
6 count. I'm a big
Yeah.
6 count believer, just for the reason it's
Mm-hmm.
easier and it introduces them to the fun of swing quicker.
Then when you're leading into the 8 count, how do you make that transition from the 6 count to the 8 count in your classes?
The generally they go into closed position or jockey
Mm-hmm.
position,
Mm-hmm.
and they already know how to do the 6 count. So what we do is we teach them the he goes, she goes, and the we go. I would teach them to use their frame,
Yeah.
and then from here they can direct the follow towards them, which would be, let's say, she goes. In this case, better, I guess,
Yeah.
now to say follow goes, or
Yeah.
he goes, lead goes. And so you go rock step, she goes. So rock step, triple step, rock step, triple step, rock step, he goes. And what they're doing is they're taking their momentum and because they're sending their momentum in one direction and they want to return the way they came, they need another rock step. So we will really just focus
Mm-hmm.
on he goes, she goes, and then the we go. I think some people call it the butterfly. Rock step, triple, and then you switch to the close jockey position on the left hand, right hand.
Okay. Yeah.
But begin usually with a connection on that, how to use their closed frame to shift it to the front, and then yeah, from there. And then for that, and that's the swing out from closed position. With the swing out from open to open, it's just the satellite flashlight. If the satellite flashlight is zipping by you, and you don't catch them, that's a 6 count. But if you decide to catch the follow, that turns into a swing out. And if the follow keeps their momentum, that turns the swing out, and you've got a very
Mm-hmm.
comfortable 360-degree swing out.
I always loved the first swing out class. Like when we get to that point, they've finished the first course, they're in their second course, it's finally coming together, and they're doing their first swing outs. It's awesome.
Yes.
And I love the way you teach it because it was so much like you get them in, you get them moving in a line, and then they shoot out, and then you kind of get them like running, and they're like sweating by the end. They're shooting forward and then launching back out, and just so much energy. And I love that about the way you taught the swing out.
Yeah, that's where one of those moments where the satellite flashlights. A lot of students are like, "This is kind of stupid," and
Right,
then
right,
you catch them and throw them out. Especially if you're using the elastic bands, it really just makes it
right.
a little more like kids playing with toys, which it is.
Yes.
And all of a sudden they're like, because they've been watching it at the social dances, and now they're like, oh, that's why they were doing this. And you hear a lot of,
Yes.
ah,
This
ah.
is the wax on, wax off.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yes.
yeah, then that's the
Yes.
moment they become Lindy hoppers. It's no longer just
Yes.
6 count and 8 count, it's the Lindy hop.
Right.
And I try to erase
Yes.
everything. I was like, stop thinking about it as 6 count and 8 count, except for choreography.
Right.
It's just Lindy hop.
Is there any other tips that you have for teaching a swing out?
Well, what's going to happen is usually once students first learn their swing out, often it's going to be people are going to have upper body problems. They're going to be like throwing their upper body back and whatnot. So
Yeah.
it's really important, especially for the follows, to say like focus on the neutral. You have to control your balance yourself. So keep
Yeah.
your core over your feet, and don't try any shine. Don't try any swivels. Just march it out, step, step, triple step. Really, just focusing on the satellite and the flashlight. Because what's going to happen
Mm-hmm.
later is you're going to teach the swivel, you're going to teach shine, you're going to teach variations and moves, and all of those foundations are going to go out the window. Students are going to forget it all the time. Almost
Mm-hmm.
everybody
Mm-hmm.
follows and leads. So you're going to, as you teach them the inside turns and the swivels, you're always going to have to keep referring back to, you've got a flashlight problem, you've got a
Right.
satellite, you're stopping, you're killing the momentum.
Right.
So keeping those fundamentals in your head, which means you need to
Yeah.
practice between classes. You just can't practice in class, wait a week and practice. You can tell the difference between a group of students who don't practice between classes and a group of students who are really keen and energetic and practicing every day. Your lessons, they're going to remember their fundamentals, because swing dancing is a physical activity. Like any sport, you've got to practice. Your body needs to practice that. And if you're thinking about your feet and you're thinking about your connection, by the time we're starting to teach you how to do variations and moves, you're going to forget those fundamentals. So the best dance every day, even if it's just for 5 or 10 minutes. I always say when you're
Mm.
brushing your teeth, practice your footwork. When you're walking down the street, maybe practice a little satellite flashlight. People will look at you funny,
Yes.
but who cares?
I always love that when you would talk about doing the triple step, and then we would like brush our teeth while we're doing the triple step. So you remind people to like do this, every day, and do this in the morning, do this in the evening. Yeah.
I don't have time is not an excuse. Just do two things at once.
Right. Right. Yeah. There are some terms that you mentioned back there. Shine is one, and talk to me about shine.
Shine is one of the few things you can't lead or follow unless you and a partner are very connected. Sometimes they can feel the small variations in your body and be like, oh, he's going to do a kickball change, or she's going to be doing a swivel.
Mm-hmm.
Shine is how a individual dancer dances to the music. Each person, when they listen to the music, sometimes you hear the vocals, you hear the trumpet, you're more listening to the bass. The shine is how you, as an individual, interpret the music, and you can't
Yeah.
let your shine get in the way of your connection. Some people you'll see, like when they're trying to lead a swivel, you'll see their hand go swivel, swivel, or moving their hand side to side, kickball
Yes.
change, and it makes sense because when your feet do something, your hands want to do it. So again, that's something you have to practice, keeping your connection steady. But the shine is where I can still be a good lead, but add a little bend flavor to the music because I hear the music differently than anybody else or most other people. So it's my
Yeah.
interpretation of the music through my feet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I got to keep it out of my connection.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so demo class. What would you teach in a demo class?
Demo class would be basically my week one part of week two beginner level one class on steroids. You have generally 30 minutes, maybe max 40 minutes, and your job is to teach them footwork, connection, and the basic. And
Mm-hmm.
if you have time, maybe closed position or jitterbug. Generally, I would go the jitterbug route. But yeah, I would get it's just a little more high energy because usually you're at a bar
Mm-hmm.
or you're.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, this is a demo class. It's not for an exchange. At an exchange, you never teach this because nobody needs to work on their basics at a swing dance
Right.
exchange. Yeah, this is for.
Yes, we're talking about for a social dance. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, you get them out there and just as the same, teach them how to hold their body posture, bend their legs. What are their feet doing? Their heels should be tapping into the ground. Um, stand like a pencil, bend your legs, all right, and put on the music. And And to make a good demo class, you need to also have, I'd say, sign language with the DJ. If you're running back and forth between the music, or even on your phone, sometimes that takes a little too much time. This is a class where I will introduce myself for about 30 seconds, and then I start the music right away. And the music should almost not stop, except for the volume going up and down the whole time you talk. So when you talk, you should talk to the rhythm of the music, because it bothers me when teachers talk against the music. It's kind of like offbeat, dancing on the offbeat. Before if I have a DJ I've never worked with, I go up there and say, there's 3 things. This means play the music. It means I can't hear it. And then stop the music. Sometimes you need to stop the music. But usually just those first 2. And so warm up, get their feet moving, teach them triple steps. I find triple steps are always the hardest, and you want to teach it quickly. And so I've fallen back on the same thing for the last 10 years is ride a horse. Everybody at some point in their life has ridden a horse. So you get their right foot forward and go, do, 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 do. And they're half a triple step right there, have them switch their feet to the left. Do, 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 do. And then you just horse to the right, horse to the left, triple step, triple step. And by that point, you should have 90 to 99% of everybody doing a triple step. You'll have some people leaping, some people doing a cha-cha-cha, and you can treat that how you want. That's when you could stop the class for 1 minute and be like, all right, I see some people leaping. Really work your way into the ground. And then, I usually don't focus so much on quick steps, but really just triple steps and then slow. So they see that a slow step, every 2 beats, is the same as a triple step. And the reason I do that is because at the end of the class, I do try to teach a jitterbug. So I want them to be familiar that the triple step and the slow step are on the same rhythms, just different footwork. Yeah. And then from there, and then triple steps, you can make fancy triple steps, have them practice, cross triple steps, crossing the front, crossing to the back, backward triple steps. Just make sure everybody is failing, because if everybody's doing it perfectly, then it gets boring. So you want people, because there's going to be people in the class that have never done this and people who have done it a lot. So try to give everybody a little bit of a challenge. And so for the 5 or 10 minutes of triple steps and slow steps and variations of those steps before I quickly put them into lead and follow lines. And then I teach them tension, neutral. And then again, the music is going. I say tension for 8, tension 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and neutral 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then tension for 4, for 2, for 1. Just have fun. When by the time they get into 1 and 2, they're having fun and they're failing, but they're connecting. And then from there, it's very easy to say, okay, teach them the rock step. So I want you to say, all right, leads, you have to put your left foot back. Follows, you have to put your right foot back. And so you go, rock step together, tension, neutral. So then they're starting to connect their feet to their hands. And then you add the triple steps, rock, step, triple left, triple right, rock, step, triple left, triple right. And do that for 2 songs. And at that point, you're either dancing with them. I often find it's better for me to walk around real quick to make sure everyone's on the right foot for rock step. And make sure they're not traveling too much. Make sure often you'll have a lot of people do the salsa, rock, step, triple step, triple step. So just being there real quick to give everybody a 5-second to a 10-second mini lesson before you come together and say, all right, you guys have now done the basic. And usually from there, I get them out of the line. I don't want them too comfortable in the line. Say, all right, mix around on the dance floor. And I would just have them start and still dancing, still in a similar shape so they can rotate. And then if it's been 20 minutes, sometimes you get to that point in 20 minutes, I might teach closed position. Or I'll teach an inside turn. Generally, inside turn throws everything off because now it's just the triple steps, the connection with the hands, that's a whole nother lesson. Right. But generally, I find open position, closed position. And then the very last song, I'll ask the DJ. I usually, beforehand, I've prepared 3 songs with the DJ, and I've only been using 2 up to this point. The third one is generally a fast song. And I'll say, all right, let's try this with a triple step, something like sing, 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 or something that's like 200, 220 beats a minute, just ridiculous. And you'll
Yeah.
see they all fail. Rock step, triple step, rock step, triple step, triple step. And I say, all
Right.
right, so let's go back to the slow step. Rock step, slow, slow. And then from that point on, they have everything they need to enjoy a social dance. And I don't like to stop the class. I might say something like, thank you for taking the class. Um, we'll give information later, but please stay on the dance floor. Keep dancing. DJ, take it away. And because if you end the class and start giving announcements, a lot of those students will go
Yep.
sit down, and I want them to stay
Yep.
there. And then I try to make sure I dance with all of the students in the open, as many as I can in the open class, whether as a lead or as a follow. And I want to keep them on the dance floor for 60 to 90 minutes. And if I can do that, they're going to sit down sweaty and happy. And then they're
Yeah.
going to start seeing some of our more advanced dancers dancing together and observing them. And then you're basically have the bait, and they're going to sign up for classes. They're excited, and you have done your job. You've taught them that dancing is fun, and
Mm-hmm.
they're in your
Mm-hmm.
dance studio.
Part of that like demo class is teaching them with that tension and compression, teaching them to be able to do really any move, right?
Any
And
move.
so they can kind of just they can kick around whatever as long as they're doing that tension and compression, they're dancing,
Yes.
right?
Yes, absolutely. And that means
Yeah.
they can dance. All of a sudden, you can have them dance with an advanced dancer. And as long as the advanced dancer doesn't really try to do a swing out,
Right.
they stick to the 6 count. Honestly, like if they're a quick learner, they can do almost anything because they
Yeah.
have the connection. Now, if they're a slow learner, well, I mean, they're going to be able to do the basic at least, and maybe by the end of the social, have a few turns as well.
Yeah.
And again, in my open classes or demo classes, I always, thank these partners and rotate. And sometimes I walk up to partners and I'll ask them, "What's your name? What lead? What's the follow's name?" And put them on the spot. Make sure that knowing
Mm.
names is important. And even if there's 60 people in that, I don't care.
Yeah.
Ask people's names. If you forgot
Yeah.
their names, that's walk up later and say, "I'm sorry, I forgot your name." But it's again, students knowing students' names works.
Mm.
There are some scenes that do name tags at the door, and I think actually that's probably the easiest and most successful way. I've never really done it. It's never been my style as a scene leader, but I know scene
Mm-hmm.
leaders who do it, and I think they probably had more success than I have had with my, give them a high 10 or give them a hug or shake their hand, but make sure you
Yeah.
know their name. People maybe can't remember as well, but if they see the name here, it's the easy way out, but it's very effective.
Yeah. Effective for what exactly? What does knowing people's names accomplish?
It makes you. It's just amazing the difference. I've forgotten hundreds of names, and it seems like I automatically lost respect, especially as a
Mm.
scene leader, as a teacher. I mean, because I
Mm-hmm.
remember thousands of names. So you've forgotten my
Yep.
name. You've asked me 4
Mm.
times, but just for other dancers knowing each other's names, that's one of the first steps to becoming an acquaintance with somebody. Like everyone's a
Yep.
stranger, and you might know a lot of information about a stranger, but until you know their name, that's like kind of the key to opening up future friendship.
Yep.
Yeah, that's in my experience. Knowing names is the most important thing to make relationships, partner relationships, friendships, and that always supports a scene. And when that Wednesday night or that Friday night comes along, they're gonna want to go. They're like, oh, I should
Yep.
go dancing. I'm like, I want to go dancing. I want to go dance with Millie and
Right.
Cho Yun and
Which is why all of the swing children loved you so much, because you cared about them, and it wasn't like you get to the end of the demo lesson, it's their first time dancing ever in their life, and then Ben, the cool teacher, it's not like you just walk off and go talk to your longtime friends. It's you're immediately dancing with the brand new people, and I think that shows that you respect each person who comes in that room. It's not like they had to earn it by being there forever. They're taking their first steps into the world of jazz and swing, and you're there to welcome them. Um,
it's part of my
yeah.
job as a teacher. And the other part is at a social dance, you also have students that are in your level 1, level 2, level 3 classes, and I think it's very, very important that you dance with as many of them as possible. If you're not dancing with
Mm.
if all of your students, if they're showing up, you should have at least had 1 or 2 dances with them over the course of a month, because they need to see that what you teach them is useful,
Right.
they can use it, because social dancing, it's hard. Taking what you learn in a studio, a safe place, is,
Yes.
and then you, like with a lot of space, and all of a sudden you have a lot of people all around you. Um,
Right.
it's hard to take what you do in a studio onto a social dance floor. So dancing with your students, it goes a long way. And whether they notice it or
Mm.
not, they notice it in their feelings
Yep.
towards the dance.
So we're talking about starting a swing scene and keeping it going. What are the ways that you see are the best ways of getting new dancers into a scene?
Well, I think you fell upon that your very first few months of teaching. What would you say? Where would you think is the best location in a city to start
The
or
best,
swing scene?
maybe the top of the computer science building.
That's it. That's where all the geeks hang out. They want to meet girls.
Yes.
In a university, not in, but near a university would be the best.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, the university swing club. Earlier in our conversation, you said that there was a scene for 10 or 15 years in your university. That's where I learned. I learned in my university as
Yep.
well. So starting, it doesn't have to be on the university if you are, but to attract the student, because university students want to find something to do. So find a bar, find a restaurant, find a cafe somewhere with the right space that you could make an agreement with near a university to start a swing scene. I've seen that in South Korea. We had our next to, I forget the name of the university, but we had a bar near a university. Same thing
Mm-hmm.
in Bangkok. We were near a university, also near a tourist district. But near, and then of course in Sichuan University, where you started it, having a scene that attracts university students is probably the best way. I've seen scenes that have tried other ways, but that seems to be the golden answer.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, yeah, just dancing. And then once you have that core crew, pretty much just kind of advertising, go to public places, go to events, uh, practice some performances together, even the shim sham. That goes a long way with strangers because it looks cool. Something they like, oh, that looks hard, but I think I could do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The demo class, of course, that's important. Finding music, maybe sometimes, I know swing dancers, especially advanced dancers, we like the classics. We like the pure swing, the stuff from the 30s and the 40s, the big bands of the earlier generations. But sometimes rock and roll and neo swing, big bad voodoo daddies, that stuff really
Yeah.
attracts people as well. So finding a mix, let's say, of neo swing with some of the classics, because we do want to make sure they're not just dancing to cherry pop and daddies. The demo class,
Yeah.
of course, is important as well, as we've talked about. A good website. When I started Bangkok Swing, I had a Facebook page, and there was an Australian guy named Rick Jones, who
Mm-hmm.
showed up and gave us a Bangkok Swing website, and that helped a lot. Now people who are traveling to Bangkok could find a scene, and so once you've got a few dancers with you, all of a sudden people are traveling to dance, and they're like, oh, people
Mm-hmm.
in other parts of the world do this too, and they're really good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just having a good, and also the location, making sure you have a place that's trustworthy, that has no problem, that maybe people are only paying a few bucks, $5 to get in, because university students are cheap, so they're not going to be buying a lot of drinks or a lot of expensive snacks. So something where maybe it's a Tuesday night, they have a slow night, and you can bring in $100 for them on a slow night, and and swing dancers do attract other business. People are just going to want to come and watch. So those are kind of the non-dance part foundation, I think, to start a scene.
You can do it even with just one or two other people, right? Because when you came to Chengdu, it was pretty much just you and I and Travis who knew how to well, it was just you and I at the beginning who knew how to dance.
Yeah.
and it's just getting those core people who are gonna stick around and help with the organization and are gonna be passionate about dancing.
Yep. Volunteer at the
Can
right
make
times.
anything happen.
And with
Yep.
university students, you've got them for at least 1 to 4 years. So it's a It's a good.
Yep.
It's better than expats. We're usually not around very long.
Yeah. And what about dancer retention? What do you see for how, like, what percentage of people stick around?
Um, I've always said 10% is probably a good 1 out of 10 people that come. You're probably
Mm-hmm.
going to see a lot of people showing up. If you have a good demo class, you're probably going to see more than that returning. But 10% retention, I found is quite good, and 10% for about a year. If you're at 0 to 1%, you need to look inward. So you're doing something wrong. But if you've got somewhere around
Mm-hmm.
10%, you're doing just about right. And the reason for that is, I know that sounds pretty low, but people when they come to swing, it's basically it's a hobby. They're looking for something, and swing dance and jazz is not for everybody. So if you find that if you can introduce it in a way that you find it's 1 out of 10 people, I think you're doing pretty good. Even if the other 9 they had a good time, but maybe they're more like chess. They like chess more. It's more their style, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's a little too much, a little too intense for them. All that number of people, or maybe it's not the
Yeah.
kind of music. So 10%.
What are some of those things that might lead to having a low dancer retention in a scene?
The scene leaders, honestly, the demo class. I've been to so many demo classes where it's all about the teacher, and they
Mm.
just go. It's like they teach a move, and once they see one person, maybe the lead can do it, or maybe the follow can do it, and that's like 2% of the class suddenly got it. Oh, let's move on to the next thing. It's going to be more complicated.
Next move. Yeah.
Yeah, next move. And so I've seen classes like that, and that's just yeah. The students didn't learn how to dance. They didn't feel like they can make a connection with anybody else. And then right there, it's the connection with other people. It's not just the teacher or the scene leader. It's
Mm.
what environment do you create? And again,
Yep.
like the names, maybe having somebody at the door greeting them when they walk in. That goes a long ways too. Even if they don't get their name, that could be where you have the name tag. All right, what's your name? Put it on. Um,
Right.
so just having a few more volunteers that are willing to maybe not dance the whole night, but somebody at the door, and then maybe other dancers who are a little more accomplished, going around and asking those beginners to dance, giving them the courage maybe to do it themselves the next time they show up,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
and also creating a safe spot. It's pretty rare, but scene leaders should have a set idea of the kind of people they want there. And if you see somebody coming in who's kind of toxic, you need to have the right kind of person, a bouncer, to say, all right, walk up, give them a warning,
Mm-hmm.
and say, okay, sorry, you're not the kind of person we want here. Um,
Yep.
which I've
Yep.
had to do, but again, 2 or 3 times. Never, it's not very often. Somebody who just doesn't
Yep.
get it.
What about training new teachers? So I think in Chengdu, this might be different in other scenes and other places in other countries where there you might be adjacent to other swing cities. But I think like in our context, it was pretty unique in that we were hundreds of miles from the closest other swing city, and so it was really just the two of us to start with. And how do we can't teach everybody that's coming to the classes. How do we create teachers and
Yeah.
eventually are able to move on?
Well, yeah, we were in a strange situation. So we basically took dancers who'd only been dancing a year, threw a teacher workshop at them, and said, all right, go teach level 1 and level 2. And that's where I learned.
Mm.
Teaching level 1 and 2 is probably where you need your most advanced teachers.
Yep.
Um, it's probably easier for them to teach some higher level classes, because if we teach them the same terminology, at least then they can watch those videos and those fancy moves, and they can teach it using the same
Right.
terminology that they learned from us in our level 1, level 2. So I think we made a mistake there by having our
Mm.
beginner dancers teach level 1 and level 2, because we thought it'd be
Yep.
easier.
I think that's a really good point, actually, because like what you'd been talking about with people taking their first steps in the dance, actually level 1 and level 2 are probably most crucial for retaining new dancers and just introducing them into the world of swing. So probably actually the barriers to them learning are the biggest at level 1, isn't that right? So you need your most advanced teachers to help them get over that initial barrier of taking their first steps.
Yes, and that's something I learned with you, and in hindsight too. It took a couple of years
Yeah.
looking back and being like, we
Yep.
lost a lot of possible students in that era of
Mm.
Swing Chengdu. So,
Yeah.
but it's something also another thing in hindsight. Oat Navarro in he's the scene leader. Him and Youngji in Bangkok Swing.
Yeah.
Um, he never allowed other people to be teachers except for one person, a guy named Sulaiman.
Hmm.
And Sulaiman, when I watch him teach, I always think, this is the guy. I hope this is how I am. Like he's got the
Yeah.
charisma, the way with the students,
Hmm.
getting them, having a good time, dancing more, talking less. And Oat allowed him to be a teacher. And that was the only teacher I think he ever accepted to teach at the Hop. So he was super picky. And I helped train Sulaiman, and it worked. Like they have excellent dancers, and Sulaiman I think quit his job and started teaching full time. So that's
Wow.
one way to do it. Oat just kept the full load on him and myself until I left, and it was just on him and Youngji, and he just worked that much harder, and he just wouldn't allow anyone to be a teacher until he found the right kind of person. Because I mean, how
Hmm.
many world class dancers have you had in a workshop at an exchange, and you're like, okay, that's where that cliche comes from. Not all good
Right.
dancers are good teachers, but to be
Yep.
a good teacher, you need to be a good dancer. That might be the best way to go about it. Just be super picky and take the load. However, that was not possible for us since dancing is just our
Right.
hobby. We couldn't quit our jobs. There's no visa for teaching
Yeah.
swing dance in
For being
almost
a
any
swing
country.
teacher, right? Yeah.
Um, so the what we ended up finding in Chengdu is we started doing an internship. We do a workshop, a teacher workshop first. This is how you teach a class. And I'd
Yeah.
run a workshop about everything we've talked about here: the footwork, the connection, um, giving a plan, writing. When I create a curriculum, I have the ultimate goal of this level. I have weekly
Hmm.
goals, and then I have my footwork goal, my connection goal, and my moves goal. And the moves goal is always varies, but I teach
Yeah.
them. As a teacher, you need to make a plan. I teach in a classroom. I'm going to approach my teaching swing dance the same I would approach my students in a classroom, because a studio is a classroom. So I have a workshop with them saying this is how you need to set yourselves up outside of the classroom. And that would usually be a full day workshop. I believe we did it in your apartment the first time.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Out on the rooftop.
yeah. And then after that, I would have the students who wanted to be teachers. They would join one of my classes. Forget which class. I guess the best way would be I join my level 3 class, and they joined it as students. And then after the class, we'd have a talk, and I'd ask them, "What do you think went well? What do you think I could have improved on?
Mm-hmm.
Um, do you have any questions?" Like you're the ones who were dancing with the students the whole time, and so we talk about the class, and then we do that again. The next series of level 3 classes, they would teach, and I would become a student in their class, and I'd be a good
Mm-hmm.
student. I'd keep my mouth shut. I might give them a little tiny direction with a question or two,
Mm-hmm.
but I would be a student in their class, and again, afterwards, I would tell them what was positive, what was negative, um, and give them feedback in that form. And I found that was the best way to introduce teachers into the scene. And then from there, you've got
Yeah.
to, after that, you got to say, okay, now you need to start going to exchanges. You need to start learning from other teachers. You need to go in Beijing, in China, Beijing, they'd have a teacher's course for 1 week. So I
Mm-hmm.
think Travis, he's gone that 3 times. We've had quite a few of our,
Wow.
our teachers go to that at least once. So for me, I give them the foundation, and then for them to improve to become proper teachers, they need to learn from other people. Just like as a social dancer, you dance with one partner all the time, you're not going to be a good dancer. So
Mm-hmm.
same thing goes
Mm-hmm.
from learning how to be a teacher, I would argue.
And I've heard one one way of talking about teaching anything is model, assist, watch, leave. And I felt like um, we were able to take the teachers through that of first like us modeling it and doing it in the apartment, and then helping them be in the class teaching. Like sometimes they would get stuck and weren't sure how to explain something, and we could jump in and you know help them over over those difficulties. And then we would then get to watch them teaching, and then kind of let them, the last step is leave, and let them grow wings and become the beautiful swing teachers of the next generation.
Yeah. I wish it was so simple, but yeah, they are now. Honestly, now when you watch
Oh,
Cao Cao and Yumiko and Travis teach, it's like but this is 6 years later or 5 years later after we had them first teach.
yeah.
So
Right. So, yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Um, okay, so creating a curriculum. So, how do you go about designing a curriculum for a course?
well, I'd say that's well, there's my side of it. There's the realistic side, and that is you dance in the scene at least for a few months. And if you're new to a scene, dance in the scene for a few months so you get to a feel for their level. If it's a new scene, you're going to have a very different um, growth, a level one to level two to level three, than you maybe a scene in
Yeah.
Sweden or Beijing. So, but I would look
Yeah.
at how do other scenes, how do they organize it? Like, what do they teach in level one up to, I think Beijing has up to level six. Some people don't go beyond level three,
Yeah.
beginner, intermediate, advanced, but then they still break those up into parts. Like at Harang, I think there's three advanced levels. So look at what other people do, combine that with the realistic, on the ground, what you see in your scene, and then from there, you can build a curriculum. And for what we did for Swing Chengdu and Bangkok Swing was level one is 6 count, and then the goal was to teach them one-handed moves, free spins, and two-handed moves. So the inside turn can also be a free spin, can also be the cuddle. Outside turn, usually not a free spin, can also be a hammerlock. And generally just
Mm-hmm.
kind of find moves that are progressive, find moves that are foundational, um, and if it's 6 weeks, create a 6 week curriculum. Start with the goals and make sure those goals make sense before you start to break it down into the footwork and the connection. So level one goal to be able to footwork, connection, and dance to the music, and maybe
Mm.
even hear the breaks. That would be
Yeah.
my ultimate goal. And then I'd find 6 mini goals to achieve that. And then within those mini goals, I would have footwork goals, as I said. Level two would be swing outs, is basically Lindy hop. Teach them how to swing out and teach them why we switch between 6 count and 8 count. And then I'd have the ultimate goal, and again, break it down into weeks. And
Yeah.
never ever plan the third, fourth, fifth, sixth week more than a goal, because after you do the
Yeah.
first week, plan your first week, over plan it and
Yeah.
practice it and then do it. And then after every class, I always take notes on the way home in the taxi or
Mm-hmm.
before while I'm sitting in bed, just getting all my ideas out there. What went well, what didn't go well. And then sometimes I'll go right into the next week and plan right away, or I'll wait till the next day. But do all your goals first. Plan the first week, maybe the second week, but never plan much more than that, because reality will hit you and you don't want to spend hours and hours thinking of great ideas that are going to be useless once you see your class. So that's
Right.
how I approach every single class. I keep all of these classes on a file so I can go back to previous. And so after years and years of teaching, I've got books of lesson plans.
And when are you planning on publishing this book?
Oh, nobody will ever want to read it because it's in Benlish. There are so many words in there that shorthand that will never make any sense.
But I love that. So it was really like each course was different because even though you have this years of experience of teaching and you know what those goals are and how to get there, you're actually looking at each class and seeing this is how they've learned, this is what did or didn't work, and then tailoring the next week to that class.
Yes, and again, you can't never even use the same lesson plan for the same class in the following series, because it's a whole new group of students, and every dancer is an individual, and every group of students create a different set of I wouldn't say different set of goals, but a different set of exercises and tools to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, after years of doing
Mm-hmm.
it, you see patterns, and um, so you can be like, all right, everybody is taking. They're not. The rock step is a touch step. All right, small things that you pick up, and
Yeah.
small quips and quotes and jokes that if anybody took all of your classes, they'd start being like, wah, wah. But people who hear it for the first time are like, ah.
What is your philosophy on topical courses like musicality or Charleston or
Uh, pre- pre-
other swing dances?
Pretty much the same. Again, just set it up as a goal and try to break it down into a sequence. If I'm teaching something like musicality, that's a really difficult one and probably one of the most
Mm.
fun. So I do a lot of research, see what other people say, mix that with my experience. Um, and that, for example, musicality. Again, I'll talk about Oat in Bangkok. I took one of his musicality classes, and he had crayons and paper for his first week, and doing the same thing where I would have students focus on their feet and move to the close their eyes and move to the music. He did the same thing with crayons
Hmm.
and paper. So there's
Hmm.
different ways to approach musicality and different ways to approach any topical course. So research what other
Yeah.
people do, take those classes,
Hmm.
combine it with your own experience, and then it'll be every class will be something new. And as a teacher, you're not going to be set in your ways. Each like since we last taught together, I've already evolved
Yeah.
in little different ways as
Hmm.
well. Just because if you're static, it's not fun.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So yeah, topical courses. Do your research both online and as well in person. Go to exchanges. Make sure you're always taking classes.
Hmm.
Um,
Yep.
and then again,
So you're always learning and improving yourself.
yes, finding out what
Yeah.
works better and what doesn't work. If you're not failing, you're
Yeah.
not trying.
Wow. Well, this has been amazing. Do you have any final words of wisdom for people who are seeking to be swing and jazz teachers?
Yeah, one more something I thought of. People have been asking me this a lot. Like, what's
Hmm.
the role of a lead? What's the role of a follow? And I've always had the same answer, which is the same as my first teacher, Mark Green from Oregon State University. I'm not sure if he's still there. If he sees this, hi, Mark.
Hmm.
Um, but he said the lead's job is to make the follow look good, and the follow's
Hmm.
job is to make the lead feel good. But my
Yeah.
wife told me her first teacher told her the lead, a partner is a picture, and the lead is the frame, and the follow is the picture.
Hmm.
And I think if you keep that in mind, it's quite deeper than that because what it is it's for that 3 minute song. It's a moment in time you'll never live again. That one song in that
Hmm.
one place with this one partner, and you're living in the moment. And that picture is
Wow.
only going to last for 3 minutes, maybe shorter, maybe longer. And so enjoy that 3 minutes with each other. Don't think about other things. Do your best to be safe, but mostly
Hmm.
listen to the music and take care of each other in those ways. Make
Wow.
sure make sure that it's a moment to be remembered. And if you have like 2 or 3 hours of those moments, man, it's like screw Buddhist meditation. I just want a Lindy hop.
Right. Yes, that is beautiful. I love it. Wow. Well, thanks so much, Ben. This was amazing. Thank you so much for your wisdom and for the many generations of swing children that you have been father and grandfather to.
It's been a pleasure. Look forward to the next round. Maybe someday we'll cross
Yep.
paths again, Julia.